I want to ask you something tonight, and I want you to answer it honestly, not out loud, but in the privacy of your own mind, where only you can hear the reply. What are you worried about? I do not ask to probe the wound. I ask because I want you to hold the worry clearly in view for just a moment, to feel its particular texture and weight, and then I want to show you something about it that will permanently alter your relationship with it. Here's what I want you to see. Worry is not a response to your problem. Worry is a statement about your identity. Every time you worry, you are at that moment identifying yourself as a finite, vulnerable, limited creature at the mercy of circumstances you cannot control. You are locating yourself inside the problem, peering out at a world that is larger and more powerful than you are, hoping that somehow things will arrange themselves in your favor. That is the posture of worry. And that posture has nothing to do with the size of the problem. It has everything to do with a misunderstanding of who you are. Tonight, I want to correct that misunderstanding at its root. Not by offering you comfort, not by telling you that things will work out, but by showing you, as precisely as I am able, what you actually are, what the creative law actually is, and why, when these two things are understood together, the statement God will solve it is not an act of religious resignation, but the most powerful, active, and accurate declaration you can make in the face of any difficulty. This is not a lecture about optimism. It is a lecture about the nature of consciousness. And if you follow it to its conclusion, worry will not so much be defeated as it will become simply impossible. Let me begin at the beginning, which is also the end, which is also where you are standing right now. You are not your body. I know you have heard this said before, and I know that for most people, it remains a pleasant philosophical sentiment that dissolves the moment a real problem arrives. So, I do not want you to merely agree with me. I want you to understand it with the kind of precision that survives the arrival of a real problem. You are not your body. You are not your personal history, the accumulated record of what has happened to you, what you have done, what has been done to you, what you have succeeded at and what you have failed at. You are not even the sum of your thoughts and your emotions, however vivid and compelling they feel from the inside. You are the awareness in which all of these things arise. Sit with that for a moment. Your body appears in your awareness. Your memories appear in your awareness. Your thoughts move through your awareness. Your emotions rise and fall within your awareness. None of these things are the awareness. They are contents of it. Objects appearing within a space that is itself not an object, not a thing, not a process, but the very ground in which all things, all processes, all experience occurs. That awareness that is reading these words right now, the one that was present when you were a child and will be present in your final breath, that awareness is what the ancient teachers called God, not a being separate from you, not a force external to you that you must petition and hope will respond. The very awareness in which your life is occurring. This is what I mean when I say you are God individualized. You are the infinite creative power of the universe expressing itself as a human being. Not a portion of that power, not a representative of it, not a channel through which it sometimes flows when conditions are right, but the thing itself, clothed in particularity, walking through a specific life in a specific body, but in its deepest nature identical with the creative intelligence that underlies all of existence. Now, hold that understanding in one hand and pick up your worry with the other. Can the infinite creative power of the universe worry about a problem? Can the awareness that underlies all of existence be genuinely threatened by a circumstance arising within it? Can God, which you are, be overwhelmed by anything that appears in the world that God creates? When the question is put this way, the answer is self-evident. Worry is not a natural response to difficulty. It is a case of mistaken identity. It is what happens when the infinite temporarily forgets what it is and behaves as though it were the finite. And the correction is not an act of will or discipline or positive thinking. The correction is remembering. Let me now address the problem itself. Not the specific problem you are carrying tonight, but the nature of all problems and why the standard response to them is precisely backwards. When a problem appears in your life, the mind immediately turns outward. It surveys the circumstances, assesses the obstacles, calculates the variables, and begins the exhausting work of trying to rearrange the outer world into a configuration that will produce relief. This is the natural movement of a mind that believes the outer world is the cause of its experience. But the outer world is not the cause of your experience. It is the effect. Every circumstance in your life, every condition, every relationship, every difficulty, every limitation is the outward projection of a state of consciousness. It is your inner world made visible, your assumptions about yourself, and reality materialized into the facts of your experience. The outer world does not create your state of consciousness. Your state of consciousness creates the outer world. This is not metaphor. This is the precise mechanics of how consciousness operates. This means something of enormous practical importance. The outer world in itself has no power to change. It is, as I often say, dead. It is the past crystallized, the already manifested residue of states of consciousness that have already been held. You cannot rearrange the dead past into a living future by manipulating its surface. The only place where genuine change originates is in consciousness itself. And here is what this means for your problem. When you worry about your problem, you are doing something very specific in consciousness. You are holding the state of one for whom the problem is real, present, and unresolved. You are inhabiting, with feeling and conviction, the consciousness of someone who has this difficulty. And the law, which is a mirror, not a judge, reflects that state back to you as continued experience of the difficulty. Your worry is not just unpleasant, it is actively creative. It is creating more of what you do not want, because it is the most feeling charged assumption you are making about your situation. When you say, with genuine inner acceptance, God will solve it, you are doing something entirely different. You are shifting your state of consciousness from one who has an unsolved problem to one who has already handed the problem to an infinite intelligence that is fully capable of handling it. You are no longer holding the weight of the unsolved. You have released it, not to passivity, not to inaction, but to the only power that has ever actually solved anything, the creative intelligence within you. This is not wishful thinking. This is the deliberate, conscious use of the law of consciousness, applied precisely to the point where most people are using it against themselves. I want to make this practical now because a principle that cannot be applied is merely decoration. The question I am asked most often, in one form or another, is this: how? How do I shift my state of consciousness when the outer evidence is so powerfully reinforcing the old one? How do I feel that the problem is solved when every fact I can see insists that it is not? How do I live from the end when the beginning is where I visibly am? And my answer is always the same: through imagination. Specifically, through the imaginative act of assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Let me be precise about what this means and what it does not mean. It does not mean pretending. It does not mean denying the facts of your current situation or telling yourself a story that contradicts what you can plainly see. It does not require the suppression of honest emotion or the performance of a confidence you do not genuinely feel. What it does mean is this: find in your imagination the state of consciousness of the version of you for whom this problem is already solved, not the problem in the process of being solved, already solved, done, behind you. The version of you who is now living in the reality where the difficulty has been resolved and who is therefore no longer carrying the particular weight that you are carrying tonight. Ask yourself, how would that person feel? Not in a grand or dramatic way, not the ecstatic relief of the moment of resolution, but the settled, quiet, ordinary feeling of someone for whom this particular trouble is simply no longer present. The relaxation in the body, the ease of breath, the particular quality of a mind that is not bracing against something. The way your attention moves freely to other things because this thing no longer demands it. Find that feeling. It is not far from you. It lives in your imagination, which is always accessible, regardless of outer circumstance. And when you find it, dwell in it. Not for hours, not with strain, but with the naturalness and ease of someone settling into a chair they know well. This is what I mean by assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled. This is what I mean by living from the end. And this assumption, held with genuine feeling and genuine acceptance, is the seed that the law of consciousness will grow into your outer experience. Now, and this is crucial, I am not telling you to sit still and do nothing. When you genuinely shift into the state of the problem already solved, you will find yourself inspired to act. Not the frantic, driven, fear motivated action of someone trying to force a solution, but the calm, natural, seemingly obvious action of someone moving from a state of sufficiency rather than lack. You will find yourself in the right conversation at the right time. You will notice the right opportunity that was invisible before because you were looking through the eyes of the problem rather than the eyes of the solution. This is what I mean when I say the outer world conforms to the inner. The right actions arise naturally from the right state of consciousness. Your job is the inner work. The outer world takes care of the rest. I want to speak now about three things that belong together: surrender, faith, and what I call the Sabbath state. Because these three, rightly understood, are not three separate practices, but three names for the same movement of consciousness. Surrender is the word most misunderstood in this teaching. To most people, surrender implies defeat, the exhausted capitulation of someone who has tried everything and has nothing left to try. That is not the surrender I am describing. The surrender I am describing is the deliberate release of your grip on the how. It is the act of acknowledging that the finite mind, however intelligent, however resourceful, however determined, does not know the most elegant or efficient path to the solution. It cannot know. Because the solution may involve people it does not know exist, circumstances it cannot foresee, a sequence of events that no conscious planning could have arranged. The finite mind can only see what is already present. The infinite intelligence within you can see, and in fact already contains, everything that is needed. When you say God will solve it, you are not surrendering the desire. You are surrendering the insistence that you know in advance how the desire must be fulfilled. You are releasing the anxious grip of the planning mind and allowing the deeper intelligence to do what it does. Find the path of least resistance, the most natural route, the solution that often arrives in a form so simple and so obvious in retrospect that the finite mind wonders how it failed to see it. This surrender is not passive. It is one of the most active things you can do because it requires overcoming the mind's deeply ingrained conviction that it must be the one to figure everything out. Faith, then, is the natural companion of this surrender. But let me be precise about what faith is, because the word carries so much freight. Faith is not belief in the absence of evidence. Faith is not the suppression of doubt by the application of willpower. Faith is a knowing that exists not at the level of thought, but at the level of consciousness itself. It is the certainty you have about things you know without needing to reason your way to them. You do not have faith that the sun will rise tomorrow. You know it with a completeness that bypasses argument entirely. When you have genuine faith that God will solve your problem, it has that same quality. Not the effortful insistence that it will be solved, not the repeated affirmation designed to overcome doubt, but the quiet, settled, matter of fact knowing of someone for whom the solution is simply a fact, not yet visible perhaps, but real as anything you can touch or see, and in a deeper sense more real, because the inner is always the cause and the outer is always the effect. And the Sabbath state is what this faith, when it is complete, feels like from the inside. In Scripture, the Sabbath is the seventh day, the day of rest that follows 6 days of creation. And the psychological truth of it is this: there comes a point in the creative process when the work in consciousness is done. The assumption has been made. The feeling of the wish fulfilled has been genuinely inhabited. The surrender has been accomplished, and what remains is simply rest, the deep, undisturbed rest of one who knows that the work is complete and the outcome is certain. Consciously enter this state after your imaginative work, after you have found the feeling of the wish fulfilled, after you have rested in the consciousness of the solution. Release it, not in the way you release a problem you are giving up on, but in the way you release a letter after you have dropped it in the post. The work is done. The law will handle the delivery. Your task now is simply live your life from the assumption that what you have planted is growing and to resist the compulsive impulse to dig it up to check. I want to address one final practical matter before we close, because it is the place where most people, even those who understand everything I have described tonight, continue to undermine themselves without realizing it. Your inner conversations. By this I mean the constant, largely unmonitored stream of thought and self-talk that runs through your mind throughout the day. Not the deliberate imaginative work you do at night before sleep. Not the conscious practice of assuming the wish fulfilled, but the background noise of the mind, the automatic commentary it produces in response to everything you encounter. This background noise is where most of your creative power is actually being directed. Not toward your deliberate intentions, but toward the habitual, automatic, unexamined assumptions that the mind has been rehearsing for years. And for most people who are struggling with a problem, that background noise sounds like this. When is this going to resolve? What if it doesn't? I can't keep living like this. Nothing is changing. I don't know how this is going to work. Every one of those thoughts is an assumption. Every one of them plants a seed. And the law, which is entirely impersonal and makes no distinction between what you want and what you are rehearsing most consistently, grows them all with equal faithfulness. The practice I am recommending is simple, though not always easy. Begin to notice your inner conversations and choose them, not by suppressing the ones that arise naturally. That is a form of resistance, only gives them more energy, but by redirecting. When you catch yourself rehearsing the problem, ask, how would I think about this if I already knew it was solved? And then think that way. Speak to yourself inwardly as one for whom this matter has already been resolved. Use the language of completion. Not I hope this will be resolved, but I am grateful this has been handled. Not I need this to change, but things have shifted remarkably. Not the language of petition, but the language of acknowledgement. The language of one who is reporting on a fact rather than requesting a favor. This practice, sustained over time, changes the entire atmosphere of your consciousness. It changes the signal you are sending to the subconscious mind. It changes the state from which you perceive and respond to the world around you. And the world, which is your consciousness pushed out, changes with it. You are not merely a human being hoping for divine intervention. You are the divine creative power, temporarily clothed in human form, exercising the only creative capacity there is, the capacity to assume, to imagine, to choose the state of consciousness you inhabit, and to trust that the law, which has never failed and will never fail, will do what it has always done with a genuinely held assumption. It will make it real. Let me leave you tonight with something to carry. Not a technique, not a practice. A single simple truth that, if you receive it fully, will do more for you than any method I could describe. God will solve it is not a prayer to something outside you. It is a declaration about something inside you. It is the statement of one who has remembered what they are, the infinite creative power, the awareness that underlies all experience, the consciousness in which the entire world arises, and who has therefore recognized that no problem arising within that consciousness can be larger than the consciousness that contains it. The problem appeared in you. The solution already exists in you. The distance between them is the distance between one state of consciousness and another. And you, the awareness, the creative power, the God individualized, have the capacity to move from one to the other at any moment you choose. That is all that is ever required. Not struggle, not petition, not the exhausting effort of trying to force the outer world into a new configuration with the tools of the old one. Only this, the willingness to remember what you are, to inhabit, even briefly, the state of the already solved, to rest in the Sabbath of a completed work, and to trust, not hope, not wish, but trust, with the deep, unargued certainty of one who knows the law, that what is held in consciousness must, by law, become the world you walk through. The problem is real, and so is the infinite intelligence that already holds its solution. God will solve it, not because you are lucky, not because you have finally done enough to deserve it, but because you are that God and you have remembered it. This is Neville Lectures. I'll see you again in the next video.